Hello, everybody. Uh, I'm Kyle, joined by the lovely Shannon. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Sorry about the delay.
Yes, and we have with us the president of the atheist community of Austin, Jamie Boone. Hello, Jamie.
Hello. Sorry for the delay.
That is
Not a
fine.
problem. So, how things been for you, Jamie?
That's a funny question. Um, busy, very busy,
I
I
can imagine
suppose.
so.
Doing, doing a lot
And
of.
tonight, tonight, Shannon and I wanted to. We thought this would be it's a needed conversation. It's over the past couple of weeks. I'm sure that's not lost on you that have been pretty crazy in a nutshell. And so what we wanted to do was sort of get a basis for in the time since that's passed, how you guys are feeling at the ACA, what if anything you would have done differently, and just have a conversation about that so that people can all sort of be on the same page. And I think to start out things, I'm going to read the original statement, and then since that's what we're going to be speaking of to mostly, that way everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what was said originally, and then we can talk about the new statement that was just put out a couple hours ago. So
Yeah.
the original statement said a statement from the ACA Board of Directors. Recently, the ACA Board of Directors was made aware that that guest co-host Stephen Woodford, YouTuber Rationality Rules, had made ignorant and transphobic videos and statements on his social media platforms in the weeks leading up to his appearance on ACA shows. We would like to make it clear that we do not share or condone his opinions or attitudes, and that we fully and actively support equal rights for the LGBTQIA plus community. We acknowledge that the ACA did a poor job showing our support by allowing Mr. Woodford to make appearances on our show without either addressing the controversial views on air or asking him to refrain from appearances until he released a clarifying statement on his channel. We also failed to communicate our feelings and intentions in a timely manner to our volunteers and fans. We sincerely apologize for the pain and anguish our failings have caused our viewers, volunteers, and our ACA family all over the world. We love the trans community and are deeply distressed to have caused anyone harm. We have let you down, and we intend to do our best to earn back your trust. The ACA is working quickly and diligently to ensure that this kind of mistake does not happen again. We will be coordinating with hosts, co-hosts, and staff to communicate any potential issues with a guest in advance of when they are set to appear on any ACA production. The ACA will not knowingly allow any ACA production or publication to be used in a manner that is inconsistent with our mission and position statements. We would also love to hear from you, our ACA family. If you have any ideas or feedback on how we can do better, please email us at president@atheistcommunity.org. So that's the original statement. Now, did you want to
Yes.
read the new statement that was just put out a couple hours ago, and then we can go from there?
Sure. That sounds good. And pull that up.
By the way, Shannon,
Hi.
it's nice. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Kyle. How you doing? I don't think I've ever been this quiet for this long. Don't worry, I'll make
You
up for
haven't.
it.
That's why I needed. I wanted to get you in.
I'll make up for it. Don't you worry. My moment's
Yeah.
coming. There we go. Jamie
So,
centered. Okay, go ahead,
uh,
Jamie.
oh, hey, I have a top of my head.
You too.
So, this was posted initially, in the same Facebook group that the original statement was first posted in, is being disseminated throughout our social media and through the same communication channels that the first statement was posted. So there's a preamble. The board of directors, just the letter then, which is communication from the president of the atheist community of Austin. The ACA would like to provide clarification regarding a recent public communication released by the Board of Directors, where we expressed our unequivocal support for the LGBTQIA+ community, The position of the ACA in this regard has not changed, and will remain as it has always. We recognize that some mistakes were made in the execution and communication regarding the events surrounding our statement and Stephen's appearance on multiple ACA programs, and we would like to take steps in order to rectify those today. We acknowledge that Stephen, Rationality Rules being the YouTube channel, released a video which contained hyperbolic rhetoric and presented insufficiently researched information regarding the participation of trans women in sport. We also acknowledge that his presence on our productions to discuss issues unrelated to this topic prior to the release of his impending video clarifying the positions he himself has indicated were incorrect and in need of amendment contributed to the sense of anxiety that is felt, especially by those who are directly affected, and gave the perception of a lack of sensitivity on our part. For that, we sincerely and ardently apologize to our members, viewers, and stakeholders who felt as if they were not taken into consideration in this regard. We subsequently released a statement which was poorly worded in order to make it abundantly clear that we unilaterally support the LGBTQIA+ community. We will not waver on this position, and as such, we encourage those who have expressed the motivation and willingness to reconsider and amend their views to do so. We do not wish to unintentionally vilify those who, through productive, rational discourse, have potentially come to a change of position. This is contrary to the views we wish to instantiate. We wish instead to pave the road that leads to change. We apologize to Stephen for our perceived condemnation, as we should have instead awaited your full response and assisted in a mutually beneficial outcome for all involved. I'm glad we are glad that we have heard from the members of the trans community and that we have been in contact with Stephen in order to work towards a resolution that is beneficial to all those affected by this conflict. We have every indication that there will be a mutually beneficial resolution, and we are hopeful that the outcome will align with our expectations. Our goals are to vociferously defend the path to truth and inclusivity. This has not and will not change. And that is a statement that was released initially just over an hour and a half ago, if I can do math quickly in my head. So no promises.
Okay.
Got it.
So it's still early
Okay.
days then, still early time since the
Yep.
since the release.
So I have only the initial response from people that first saw it go out to judge. But
Okay.
the evidently grammatical error that slipped through my drafting process is it's not the worst problem with communications from the ACA in recent days, to be clear, but yep.
So do you feel it's not?
Sorry,
do you
no, I
feel
just
like
meant that sorry?
Go ahead. We're probably lagging over
Oh,
each
yeah.
other. Go ahead, James.
I just meant that there's a and we will remain as it has is not. Yeah, I left a we in there where it should be. There's deciding on final language is not always easy
Not
or
always easy.
decisive.
Especially because there's so many people involved who are invested on so many sides who are personally affected. And so
Yes.
it's very, very difficult to make sure that you are taking everybody into consideration in order to release something like this and still be able to instantiate your values. I know that can't be easy. How are you feeling about the ACA's position right now? Do you feel as though you are being representative of the values that you hold currently?
I mean, we are still in the process of, I think, improving the ACA is still in the process of improving the way that it's representing itself and representing its values. But I think that we are on, that road to change and to clarifying where we stand on supporting the pathway that like, leads to changed minds and a better world. But for this directly, we needed to go back basically to square one in terms of where the ACA stands on discourse and communication, which is a fundamental part of what we do. We're known for call-in shows. We tell people, call in, tell us what you believe and why, and then we don't say that, and then Matt Dillahunty is going to yell at you and say that you're wrong. But it's very much that in our haste and zeal to respond to hurt, and we heard from members of the trans community that were concerned about where we stood in terms of defending their rights, that we rushed the statement to press and didn't consider all of the factors and elements that needed to be taken on board before we released and finalized the statement. And the results of that hasty process have unfolded over the last 8 days.
Right. So so is it, am I appropriately steel manning you if I say that what you're saying is that you were very, very ardently in support of the trans community and wanting to make sure that they felt your unilateral support when you released the initial statement, and your desire to ensure that they felt that support was allowed you to construct that statement maybe a little bit more emotionally in order to have that be portrayed, and the wording wasn't as carefully thought out as it could have been, and that led to these ramifications?
Yes, I think that you are steel manning my position very well, and I'm glad that you are, because I'm certainly not. But
Good. It's not easy. It's not.
no,
Yeah.
it's not. I sound like I've never been on camera before, but yeah. So that when the board was responding, there was a sense of urgency, and I mean, I've used the word zeal repeatedly, but this tremendous push that, it admittedly was more emotional than I think any group of people speaking on behalf of an organization should allow to influence decisions that are this important. Obviously, emotions or no, let's be clear that the part of the intention behind the initial statement was reassure and recommunicate as clearly and firmly as possible that trans people are people, trans rights are human rights, etc. Things that seem, from where I'm sitting, kind of no-brainers, but that's kind of a side issue at this point, because what I'm trying to address is a series of, if I'm happy to say miscommunication, as long as it's understood that I don't mean that the part of the initial statement that was well communicated was, we hear you and we're sorry, to the trans community. The part that wasn't intended, that got added because, I mean, as you said, the emotional zeal that drove the statement to press before it had been reviewed and proofread sufficiently, caused us to act rashly and phrase things in ways that we otherwise wouldn't have, right? I mean, we've been in touch with Stephen since then, and we understand that he's said and communicated. I can't keep track of which thing happened which day at this point, but yeah, it's been a lot of late nights and not enough sleeping, but communicated that he was working on a video that on the first hand, apologized, and on the second hand, I think clarified which parts of his views have changed. I think mostly the first hand is probably more important than the second, but yeah, that wasn't something that was mentioned in the first statement. And there was, while the specific language choices are interesting, and sure, it doesn't literally include the word transphobe. The initial paragraphs, additionally, with the
Give that
length to which
implication.
the following paragraphs and the detail and the emotional force that it communicates certainly sets a context where it sounds like there's where it communicates something other than what was intended, which is a condemnation of the character of Stephen, which was not the intended point, because even the board of the ACA isn't. We're not mind readers, and so I can't say that I know what's in his mind, but I know what was in the statement that was initially released and what was in the statement that was just released less than 2 hours ago. And yeah, it isn't stated in the second statement, sorry, Stephen, we should have communicated better. We didn't mean to denounce you or renounce your presence here. But yeah,
That was my.
it's been
That was
it's been a lot of back and forth because, like I said, we still want to stand very firmly behind the members of the trans community, and the way that this has unfolded on social media has been I don't even know what adjective to use, but yeah,
storm.
I should let you ask more questions if you're interviewing me.
Shannon's going to be asking the majority of the questions, but I had mainly one, and it sort of stems off of the last part of what you said. Was it the ACA's position that rationality rules is transphobic? Because that seems to be the main question that should be asked, since the side conversations that transpired after the statement hinged on that. It was the people that deemed rationality rules as transphobic versus the people who were saying, no, he's not. He admitted mistakes, that sort of thing. So does the ACA feel that rationality rules is in any way transphobic?
No, I think is the best answer to that question. The video that he released about trans women in sport, as it was highlighted in the first letter with context that's stronger, certainly, than the second letter, and as it is acknowledged again in the second letter, and as I can clarify now, is not a video that either I or the ACA can support or agree with at all. And I can't speak for Stephen, but I think it would be interesting to ask him whether he agrees with that first video, because an answer to that question might put a lot of the people that are claiming that that is his character, it might answer their question very definitively. Well, as definitively as you can at this point. Because, I mean, I suppose you technically can take it down off of YouTube, but that sends an entirely different message. Yeah, I've had to learn
that could
a
be
lot.
perceived as attempting to erase a mistake as well.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. It's difficult land to traverse, because essentially you're at a point where there's so many people who are so emotionally invested, and people's human rights are in the balance, because these things snowball and then are weaponized against a marginalized group that deserves nothing but our support. So initial mistake being made by Stephen in his video, which he seems to be acknowledging publicly and attempting to fix.
Yeah.
Those mistakes do deserve to be highlighted, and the fact that they happen does deserve to be scrutinized. However, I think the primary issue with the initial statement, which I'm glad to see is being rectified, and I'm glad to hear you think it's being rectified, is the fact that he had made indications that he had made those mistakes. He had acknowledged that there was mistakes being made and made indications that he was planning to progress and correct those mistakes. I mean, there is still some ambiguity. We haven't seen what his video looks like yet. I'm incredibly hopeful and optimistic. And yeah, I'm incredibly hopeful and optimistic, and encouraging that is, I think, what should be paramount, because somebody becoming an ally and going through the rational discourse and changing their mind is something that the ACA, purports to stand for. So I'm glad to see that you clarified that in the second statement as well. Do you feel as though, as it pertains to Stephen, the specific language that gave the implication that he's transphobic, and the fact that he had indicated, if he was staunchly standing behind it, I'm not even certain that we would be sitting here right now. But the fact was that he had indicated a desire to act and to change. So do you feel that those two may be the primary issues that people had with the initial statement, like those two components?
Sorry, so the last component, I think that I understood. I'm not sure I was clear on the first component, in part because I was focusing on the portion of your question where you said, because that's a value that the ACA purports to hold. A large part of what needs to be communicated is that respectful, calm discourse in a specified forum that it is appropriate for, in order to engage people who have different ideas and conclusions than you, in order to change minds, is at the absolute center of what is communicated by the ACA out. It's a core value of this organization. And that needed to be said. And so the actual
that's a fantastic
question was the in regards to his indications that he was willing and desired to change his mind, or at least to educate himself, I think was what your question was getting at.
To educate himself on the journey towards changing his mind and being willing to act on the results of that change.
Oh, and your question is, do you think that was one of the main components in terms of people having a problem?
Yeah, that people felt was.
I think it was in large part, right? So in this controversy, because it touches on trans rights, and it's public and it's on social media, there's a large population of internet people that are going to spew hate, and I think I'm not really aware of any of the stakeholders at all in this that are saying, oh yeah, no, the dude bros of the internet that hate trans people and say whatever about them, are a part of this. That isn't something that the ACA responds to at all. The point that, hey, here's a person who has said they're not only willing to change their mind, but they're about to communicate how they've changed their mind, and you've released this statement with wording that if I could go back, I would change, certainly. It comes across with a tone and a strength that denounces them and implies large aspects of their character. I think, yes, that stands in direct conflict as an idea to, like I said, the absolute core pillars of what the ACA stands for. So yes, I think that's one of, if not the primary things that led to the backlash. I mean, excluding people that don't think that trans rights are human rights.
Yeah, those people don't deserve apologies.
Yeah.
And you would not give them to them, I'm sure.
It's interesting because in initial communications, I realized in trying to figure out, like, okay, well, this is, core values. This is what happened. Here's why. Here's, attempts to fix it. I realized along the way that the problems that could be caused by miscommunicating again, which has weighed heavily on me, would be not sounding like that, you're championing the cause of hate, which is not where we are at all.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that covers at least
respect that
part of
answer.
your question.
Yeah, no, I respect that answer. I do have a couple more questions about some of the events about some of the events that since the original statement was released up until now. So many people in the live chat up until this, and on Twitter, and some people in DMs to me have asked about moderation on the YouTube channels and your social media platforms. Many people felt as though anybody who was being contra or spoke out against the statement for any reason was being censored. And a lot of people were hoping that you'd be able to clarify um, if that was intentional, unintentional, and if there are any changes going forward. I noticed that you do have on your Discord now, there is an entire segment that's dedicated to this that people may not know about. I did notice that this afternoon. Would you be able to kind of clarify what your platform going forward is, and what may have led to that?
So a lot of the problems in terms of moderation on our social media, and why the reason why when the statement was originally posted at almost exactly the middle of the night local time, why it was posted with comments turned off, and why all communication on social media was directed towards one place, and why some things got through in live chats and on social media, and other things, some things that would be moderated based on the old moderation rules got through, and some things that should have been didn't get through. Is we were unbelievably shorthanded in terms of moderation, and it's one of the things that's occupied a significant portion of my time is trying to figure out.
That's great timing.
Yeah, I mean, luckily he's not on medical. Eric is now back in the office, and obviously that him being out of the office for this is also not great timing at all. So we've been shorthanded in the office and online and in all of these moderations. Obviously, that can't undo the perception that the ACA supported censorship and all of these things that are exactly opposed to the core value that I've already highlighted for the ACA. And that's changing. We're looking at recruiting new mods, changing the way that their moderation teams are managed, and actually in the same board meeting where the board voted to rescind the previous statement and clarify, with the intent of clarifying what its communication position is. It voted to has a very, very strong change to our moderation rules, which is to limits to a very strong degree active moderation, such that dissenting views of any kind and a lot of, well, this is a bad idea to say online, but it needs to. Hey, everyone that would want to comment something that's just on the edge of what's acceptable. But yeah, actions taken by the board and by myself to organize social media. Our moderation has changed. The conversation is much more open, and I'm still checking my email, president@atheist-community.org. Don't worry, I've already gotten conflicting emails of hate and support on this second statement, but we'll see how they continue to come in. Yeah, the social media, the handling of the social media at the same time, terrible timing, but it was also mismanaged, and gave exactly the opposite impression that we would want to give.
But you feel as though going forward, those are things that you've learned from these experiences and are able to put new sort of, I guess, scaffolding in place in order to move forward in a positive direction in this area?
Yes. So we
Learning experience.
examined what the goal of our social media was in terms of, or what, the way that we were moderating, and what goals those rules and directions were aimed towards. And when thinking about open discourse and honest communication, even with people that you fundamentally disagree with on almost everything, etc., um, uh, you have to have those conversations if you want to change or affect their mind, right? It's part of the reason why, in clarifying the core value that I described earlier in this, I used "in the proper forum" as a phrase, because you can't kick in someone's front door or demand that someone listen or speak to you. That's not what free speech is. However, if the ACA is an organization that promotes free speech and honest discourse, then the platforms that it has to host speech and discourse need to be less restrictive than they were.
Right.
So there's conversations happening internally in terms of ways of facilitating places for different topics of discussion. And I know that people are going to shout censorship and, oh, there's, why can't I express? I actually, how clear did that come across to you, even though it was much longer of an answer than it needed to be?
Well, let me see if I can repeat it back to you, and you can let me know if I understood it correctly. It sounds
Good.
to me as though you're saying, because what you stand for in the way of values as an organization is that there should be open discourse in order to encourage people to change their minds and, use logic and rationale in order to be able to compel to change staunchly held or dogmatic beliefs. If you don't provide a space where those conversations can take place, then you're not sticking to your core values, because that's the manner in which you as an organization go about changing people's minds, so that people who have damaging ideas can find a way out of them. So
Yeah.
now you're looking more towards still providing forums that are safe places where people aren't going to have personal attacks and aren't going to be subjected to bigotry, but people who express bad ideas are going to have a place where they can have those ideas challenged.
Yes, I think, wow, that's fantastic. I wish we had a PR job to offer you and hire you for it, but I would add that it's not that even just understanding a person's viewpoint that is different than you is valuable. But that's, yes, I agree with you that is what I communicate.
Okay. So
Yeah,
I have a few more questions if you're still comfortable with answering questions about this.
oh, bring it on. Yeah.
Bring it on. Let's party, Jamie.
Yeah, this is what I do. Come on. All right, next caller. We'll take.
So
I'm gonna not throw out any names of callers right now.
no, for goodness sake, please don't. So
Nope.
so you've already referenced that you're getting emails that are supportive, and you're getting emails that are absolutely vitriolically angry. Now, I imagine if your experience with this situation, which I'm sure is far more intense than mine, is similar to mine, you're getting vitriol from people who are on very opposite sides of the spectrum. People who feel as though anything separate from flat out condemnation of Stephen and rationality rules, and just constantly being at him to pull down the video, identifying him as transphobic and calling him a transphobe, and implying his intent is nefarious, is unacceptable. And there's people on the opposite side of the coin who say that anything anywhere south, I should say, of completely falling at his feet to ask him for forgiveness because of the harm that you've caused him in this situation because of the statement, is also going to be unacceptable. So there's two people on either side of the spectrum that it's you can't find a way to through to middle ground where you're going to bring either of those people to a point where they're going to be satisfied with your position. I wouldn't think so. I don't envy you for that reason. Do you feel as though overall, going forward, there's a clear path for you, like where even though there's going to be people who are still going to not be satisfied, and that's an unfortunate truth either way, that there's a path going forward, where you can have more of a community reconciliation, because there are some divides that seem to be taking place in the community.
Yeah, and that cuts me, I think, it cuts me deep still, is that it's this the parts of this problem that were caused by the first statement didn't need to be. If we had even just released a statement that was shorter or worded differently and didn't hit heavily on that just clarified why decisions were made, we wouldn't have sparked a conversation around this topic that had these specific events to culminate around, that made it even more divisive than an actual just discussion of trans rights, which is divisive, but I know where we stand. And it sticks with me because I'm not sure how much that divide and those divisions can be healed. I can only do what I can from my position, and I can only act to some degree on behalf of the ACA and work towards a community that is stronger. Well, that is stronger even though it's suffered the wounds of this divide and the harm caused by the first action, the initial statement, and we don't know what the actual full response to the statement I released a couple hours ago is. So I think there's a lot of that divide that can be healed, but there are people that are online, right? It's not just emails I'm getting, and it's not just messages on Facebook and all these things. People are tweeting about this, etc. And there's a lot of things that are external to the ACA that this has sparked, right? There are YouTubers, some of them that have even stood up for trans rights and talked about these things again and again and again, that are getting called out by people that don't think that, they think that they haven't weighed in, or they think that everyone should weigh in, that everyone should weigh in immediately, or it's been too long. I know certainly the ACA, the time period that it took between the first statement and now is a point of criticism that the ACA has received. I don't have experience in I don't have prior experience in dealing with a conflict like this or a disagreement like this, and so I don't have any, I've been here before and this is what's going to happen, clarity on what even can happen or is possible. But it's one of the things that I would most like to, it's one of the priorities that I place, or that I have, in terms of building and sustaining and helping to grow a community of atheist activists that values each other and values human rights and values open discourse. And so I'm not trying to do it alone. The ACA isn't acting unilaterally. We're not just showing up on our own shows to talk about this. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and
it's important to clear the, so I've seen a lot of people, sorry to interrupt you, but I've seen a lot of people in these spheres talking about why you made the statement, why you made the statement the way you did, et cetera, right? Implying intent, or imbuing intent upon the ACA. And I thought that the best way to address these things was to speak to you guys directly so that we can address the source and take away the opportunity for people to speculate on intent. So the next question I'm going to ask is one of the most important questions to me, and I'm fairly certain that I know the answer, but I believe that it needs to be made abundantly clear.
Okay.
Do you feel as though, as a result of this, the trans community, the LGBTQIA plus community, is still going to feel as supported by the ACA? And why should they feel as though they are still just as supported? Because some people are going to look at this and say, this is you caving or whatever, when it seems to me like it was more so you just rectifying linguistic errors in the initial communication in order to communicate more effectively. But people are going to say those things, right? We need to be able to
make
it abundantly clear that these people are supported.
The idea that, oh, okay, I'm going to do this, and then hate mail will stop, and everyone will dance around and sing whatever the secular version of Kumbaya is, and there'll be rainbows and ponies and ice cream. That's not even a pipe dream I could have if I was trying. Again, there's some hate mail that we always expect that we don't care about because it's vitriolic and from a position that it has nothing to do with what we do and is hateful. But I don't think it's fair to say that there's one position that the trans community is going to take in response to this, or that the entire, because it implies that the entire trans community, or even a sufficiently large consensus of the trans community, or 90% of the trans community, is going to think the same way. People that are trans are, like every other large group of people, they have differences of opinion. People are people. But I hope that a large effect of what we're going for here, and why I wanted to have this afterwards, and why I was glad that I got that I'm here now and that this has happened, is that, I don't know, I think I communicate better in discussions than on paper and in statements, and I wanted to be able to clarify this as much as I could afterwards, because yes, we part of the hesitation and the back and forth, and in terms of drafting statements and crafting and clarifying what the ACA's intent was, is we absolutely cannot, one, appear like, I'm trying not to use the phrase dude bros, but I don't know another phrase to describe, people who are vocally anti-trans on the internet and have tweet as quickly as their thumbs will carry them. Good on you, bro. I don't care. But so to clarify that we didn't cave to that our position on trans rights hasn't changed, those are important. There are people that are trans, and there are people that are trans allies, where that's not going to be good enough, where the fact that a second statement was released will be perceived as a betrayal regardless of what the second statement was or why, where the idea that, we got criticisms that the first statement wasn't strong enough. The idea that, one, the entire trans community is going to agree, I can't speak to. Even trans people
But
that
you can speak towards the fact that you haven't deviated on, you.
No. So what has happened is that
they can still feel like anybody can still feel unilaterally. Anybody can still feel like they can go to ACA forums, for example, or on ACA pages, and they can feel as though that's a safe space where they don't have to feel as though they're going to be attacked for who they are.
Yeah. So abuse, attacking someone individually, abuse and harassment are not permitted on ACA forums, digital or otherwise, because part of what we stand for is addressing ideas and not people, and making the clarification there. And in the same way that if you discuss the merits or faults in a religion, you're not talking about the people in there. And so no one should feel like they're being targeted or attacked or harassed or stalked online if they're on any ACA digital property. There's going to be discussions there that unfortunately get heated where people are wrong about things and insistent that they're not. But at the point at which people are targeting people, abusing, even online, creating patterns of harassment, it's not acceptable. To the point of your question, which is, are people going to be able to feel safe in ACA forums? Yes. And one of the things that impacted me tremendously the other day when I'm reading through a lot of these criticisms to get a general feel for what points people are bringing up is the point that someone made, which was that Stephen was here in this building and they were curious and wondering, and in some cases making claims about how the people that were here felt and responded to him being here. And I'd like to make it clear that in terms of harassment or making people uncomfortable, and discourse and these things, we value open discourse, but we recognize that there's somewhat of a difference between discussions online and in person, because online it's easier to remove yourself from the discussion. That I don't really have a way of demonstrating with speeches or statements or interviews, but if you come here, if you ask anyone that is a local about initiatives that have been taken, particularly recently, to make sure that this building is, one, open, and two, facilitates a physical place for people that live here or are visiting here or just stop by for one day and know that they are safe and be in a community of non-believers and free thinkers. Yes, safety first, to use a cliche. And the more I say about it, the less emphatic my statement becomes, unfortunately, but I feel very strongly that that is a priority.
Okay.
And
So you don't feel as though there may be some people who may feel that they aren't necessarily emotionally safe because opening forums up to more open discussion may make them feel as though their very existence is up for debate. So that is where it becomes problematic. So it sounds to me as though you're communicating, and again, let me know if I'm representing you correctly, that's not something that would be tolerated in those spaces, that that the very existence of trans people is not going to be open for debate on ACA platforms.
so,
Perhaps I'm not
sorry.
articulating. Some people in the,
No, sorry, I hadn't heard the phrase debating. That I never thought I would hear Shannon Q refer that way to the existence of trans people, or even just the words, even though that's not your intent.
what did I?
So
that may be their fear. I don't think it's open for debate.
No,
it's not open for debate. So that's why some people
there isn't a reasonable doubt about the existence of trans people at all. Question I can answer singularly and definitively.
Do you understand what I mean when I say that they fear that? And more,
I'm attempting to find a way of articulating it without writing a novel in my answer, which is that in different parts of ACA platforms is probably not the right word, but in places where discourse is promoted and put on display for the ACA, different things are permitted and different things are moderated in a case, right? So for example, there are calls that I would take on my show that I would never expect anyone else to allow me to subject them to, with callers who have points or positions, etc., that are that are terrible and spiteful and trashy. I'm losing negative adjectives, and I'm losing my point, which is that the ACA recognizes the value of providing a place where people any people but
Mhm.
particularly the value to a group of people that is as marginalized as the trans community. Provide a place where they can find the type of community that I have set out to create everywhere and encourage everywhere as much as I can, particularly in things directly impacted or created or controlled by the ACA. Providing them that feeling online is
It's paramount to you.
paramount. Thank you. I was stuck on the word goal, but it's certainly a goal, and it's a goal that is paramount.
That's good to hear.
And
I hope you understood the impetus of my question.
yes, which is the
I'm making it very, very abundantly clear that to me it is not open to debate, but there are people that if they go into forums where there's open dialogue, there are people who would attempt to, on public platforms, and do quite frequently, attempt to debate that. And it's not open for debate. It's like debating whether or not the earth is round. You hear that, Kyle? Not open,
my point, which is that, well,
Yeah.
whatever it is, flattery.
Is a painful experience, and some people will look at this statement and this potential shift of position as making a place where they once felt as though they could come and constantly be safe into so conglomerated in a different way. And it sounds to me as though you're saying nothing about those values in any way change with the moderation change, and that's still not going to be tolerated, and that's not a fear that anybody has to have. That's all I was trying to clarify. I apologize if I articulated it poorly.
I think I've understood what you said. Now I understand how people feel when I well, except your answer was cogent. Yeah, no, that's not a fear that people should have. Abuse and harassment are not acceptable, and arguing with someone that their existence is questionable,
who they
or
are.
the whether their existence is permissible is not that is abuse. I mean, hey, another statement that I can make emphatically, or at least simply and definitively.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but the point I wanted to make is that in the same way that Kyle has taken, well, flat Earth isn't attacking, people because,
No,
at all. But
It always comes back to flat Earth. Always.
yeah, it does. Everything comes back to flat Earth. It's the flat Earth conspiracy. The flat Earth groups have created all problems, or whatever. I can't even put energy behind a joke right now. But no, I mean, to talk even. It's a call-in show. Eric and I, and we've taken calls from people that are wrong about human rights and wrong about trans issues. And actually, one of our more popular guests, our most popular guest, took those calls and set people straight on that. And the difference is that in those forums, I'm the one taking the call, Eric and I are taking the call, or one of us and a guest are taking the call. And so the people that are being, I suppose in a way, that are part of that specific conversation are all there and consenting to it.
Mm-hmm.
And in larger forums where you have thousands of people communicating about an issue, oh, here's a post, here are the comments under it. A person responds to a comment, and their comment gets a response that is absolutely not part of a conversation they would ever agree to be a part of. That's an issue that needs to be clarified and dealt with. And I'm committed to providing safe forums for people to exist in. And I'm also committed to taking calls and providing a forum where people who are wrong can come in to be told that they're wrong. And I don't think that anyone is under the impression that the ACA has only one forum or only one show or only one Facebook page or group. We have two that are basically around the AXP right now, and I think differentiating them is something that we need to accomplish.
Okay.
But obviously, there's always a degree of crap that you can't have. You can't have incitements to violence or genocide in this. I hope that
I'd
that
put
answers
genocide
your.
into violence pretty comfortably.
You put genocide into what? Oh, into
And I'd group that in with violence.
non-violent genocide is a concept that I don't think exists. I don't know my
Yeah,
battery.
that's what I'm saying. I feel like that umbrella would cover that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
apologize. I feel that though that you're answering questions that go without saying to you. I just want to make sure that there is that
Yeah,
people
it's necessary.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
the
Unfortunately,
actions
it's
and communications of
really
the ACA
drill down clarification.
Yeah,
It's
I
okay.
mean, but it's necessary. They should go without saying, but they have to be said now because the actions and communications of the ACA have made them unclear. And so it's
Well,
necessary
taking
to clarify
steps
the
forward.
record. Sorry?
I appreciate you taking steps forward. Like this is fantastic. I'm very much appreciative that you're willing to have this conversation right now. Is in a space where it's I'm certain you're getting a barrage from all sides. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I have one last question, and then I'll allow Kyle to talk briefly. Just briefly, I'll allow Kyle to talk. Get ready, Kyle. But I have one more question.
Now you told me
Your
to.
10 seconds are coming up.
just close
That's right.
Talking.
Shortly-ish. So the last question that I have for you is, do you feel as though currently you have mended a relationship with Stephen at this point? And I'm not suggesting that that's the most paramount thing that is of the utmost importance in this situation, because some people will criticize that, but people will ask. So what do you feel as though you two, or your groups, I should say, or him and your group, were able to, abridge and reconcile some of the harm between the two of you in this situation? Do you feel as though there's a path forward in this situation? What's
So
the pulse on that?
So I think so. There's every indication. I mean, like, that's why I put there's the sentence in the second statement that is helpful in my answer, which is that there's every indication that there's going to be a mutually beneficial conclusion to this. Obviously, there isn't a public response, nor am I demanding or necessarily even asking for one from Stephen, and that's part of the path forward, right? I can't speak to what Stephen's position is on any important issues, but there isn't a value that I'm aware of the ACA shying away from disagreements had politely, and that's why it's important to mend the relationship as much as
And you feel
I can.
so
And
that
I think that it, as best I can say, because I can't speak for Stephen, I can only give my impression of
okay.
his position as it's been. So I've been in regular communication, not just with members of the trans community and other stakeholders, but
Mhm.
I've also been in communication with Stephen, and so there are parts of his responses and feelings about this situation as it's evolved where I know specifically what his feelings or thoughts have been, and there's every indication that I have that this is very much a positive and significant step forward to mending that relationship and finding that, again, mutually beneficial conclusion.
You did tweet out the
To be able to
statement.
have a relationship without this. So, sorry?
Okay. So you feel as though there's a good path going forward as things stand now. There's a good path going forward.
Yes. I don't want to give the impression. So the reason that I had that unbelievably long preamble is that I don't want to give the impression that I've said, yep, here's a statement, and Steven's gonna have to feel good about it, whatever, because that's not how mending relationships works. And I appreciate you clarifying that just because you're asking this question doesn't signify it's, I appreciated that. But yes, I think that we have that I've taken actions deliberately and publicly and on behalf of the ACA that have built the bridge back to a positive working relationship. And while we haven't entirely crossed that bridge yet, the path forward that would lead to the mutually beneficial conclusion is clear. And I hope that we walk it, and we walk it together.
Okay.
Hand in
Fair enough.
hand, skipping along. But
All right. Well, that is high hopes.
yeah,
I'd watch that. I hope for that. That's what I hope for.
oh
It would be
no.
music and everybody's happy,
Now I
and there's
think
such unicorns
one-
you were talking about earlier.
Hey, we've got
right.
gene editing. Maybe we'll get a unicorn.
Just for
Yeah,
people.
because one,
Cast
not
that.
everyone's going to be happy, but if it, but if we go forward and there's this pie in the sky and reconciliation and everything is great, that means that we're going to have to, at least Steve and I are going to have to do a video where we actually hold hands and skip down a lane or something.
For me, yes, please.
Yes, just for Shannon, not
From here.
biggest.
I'm certain that after
Sorry.
this stream, everybody is going to all get together and talk about how the best path forward is for all of us to work together towards ensuring that rational discourse remains open and that people identify that their rights are not up for debate and that people understand that they are respected and people understand that there's a legitimate concern for their feelings that's being taken into account, but things need to be done in the appropriate fashion, and that shouldn't be discourse closing, and it shouldn't be actively seeming as though you're discouraging somebody who's in the process of changing their mind through that rational discourse. So I hope that people identify that those are the core tenets that I'm getting from you.
Yes.
In this situation and feeling the pulse of the ACA.
Under different circumstances, I would give the example of people debate with believers differently, but yes, those are the core principles that I'm communicating. I'm glad that I got them across to you sufficiently that you could restate them better than I did.
You give me too much credit, Jamie.
It's easy. So what else you got? Come on, he's not even
I have some super chats to read. I haven't looked at them yet, so I don't know what Kyle's got going on. You may speak, Kyle.
I just have one final question because I think Shannon covered them already, but some people were asking, and I think it's a legitimate question. Moving forward, if this is sort of mended, will there be a possibility that they can see rationality rules on further or upcoming broadcast by the ACA, or is that something that you're still out on?
So, I mean, the first part of your question was if this is mended, and that's a very important clause to keep in that question, but the answer is yes, at least from my position. But the board and the president don't directly control every aspect or even most aspects of how show hosts run their shows. So Stephen was invited on to the Atheist Experience by the host, and that's not a decision that went up for a vote on the board. And I think that having content creators have a longer leash is good. But no, I don't think that again, if this is all mended is an important clause, because I don't know, maybe Steve's going to release a video that says, oh, surprise, I am actually Hitler, or whatever.
I'm hoping not. That I would be really surprised. I don't think he's actually
Too.
here,
I
but
would I would too. My computer's dying. I would also be surprised and sad. Don't do it. Don't be Hitler.
I think
can, hey,
like
I can say that emphatically as well. Don't be Hitler. Don't do it.
yeah,
It's not great.
I
I think we
endorse
can all
that
get
statement.
behind that. I think what's important, like I know that there are a lot of heated opinions on both sides. I think that a sort of a huge in the community, it's become sort of with some people vitriolic, and I think it's important. I just want to say this isn't a question; it's just a statement I have that I think everyone needs to take a step back and look at both parties involved here, and both parties involved have come out and said that they made a mistake. They would have done something differently if they had it to do all over again. And I think it's important that if you have people that are willing to admit that and willing to do what it takes to correct the mistakes that they've made, we need to give them that opportunity. And the divides that people keep talking about within a community only happen if you allow them to happen. Disagreements don't have to mean divide. And in this case, with both sides, they've both admitted that if they could do an instance over again, they would have done things differently. So I think we need to give them that opportunity. And it's important that I think to drive home again that Rationality Rules is not transphobic. As a member of the LGBTQ community, I consider him an ally, and I just wish that sort of rhetoric would stop. A lot of the rhetoric, actually. We need to be okay with the fact that two people or an organization and a person said they would do things differently. Let them do that, and don't let it come between the community and divide what this community is great. And it's a shame to see that it's just coming down to choose a side, because I don't think you have to in every case. And this would be one that I wouldn't choose a side on.
I feel
Shannon?
like when people are in a situation where they're willing to acknowledge mistakes and looking for a path forward to rectify them, being charitable in those situations benefits everybody more than seeking retribution, because that's how stronger communities and better worlds are built, not by perpetuating consistent attacks in order to feel as though you have retribution for pain that you felt, but rather to acknowledge that even if it may be the person or people that were the source of that pain, them changing their mind and taking steps forward away from those mindsets prevents future pain, not just for you, but others. So continuing vitriolic assaults that cause divisiveness may not lead to the outcomes that you're purporting to desire. I'm all about, as I've said multiple times, aligning actions with intent. If your intent for an outcome is that somebody change their mind, or that ultimately a world be a better place, or a group of people become as accepted as they should be, then somebody who's willing to change their mind and willing to do better, or a group that's willing to change their mind and willing to do better, should be encouraged instead of discouraged, and supported as best you can if you feel as though you can, as opposed to cutting that person off when they're in the process of becoming who you are stating you want them to be. Actions should align with intentions. Think about what the perceived outcomes are going to be of your actions. And if the perceived outcome is going to be pushing somebody who could become a strong ally to you, further and further and further away and engaging their emotional responses and making them angrier with a group of people that they're attempting to extend an olive branch to, your actions and your intent aren't aligned. Those are my fears. That's why these things take place. That's why people start to push farther apart. That's why people faction off into camps when everybody has the same ultimate goals and we should be working together to achieve them instead of arguing incessantly about who's choosing the right path to achieve them and who is choosing the wrong one.
Yes.
Support each other if we take a path that you didn't agree with and failed, because you know where we're trying to head on that path. Don't criticize us because we didn't take the path you took. There's more than one. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that, and I think I can use language that's used to describe the position and that people take, which is there's a difference between vision and mission. And if we share the same vision, the same future world that we want to achieve, the fact that the mission that you are on that gets us one step closer there is different than the mission that I am on, doesn't make us enemies. If we share the same vision, or even similar visions, or even compatible visions, we're both made stronger by working together.
I like that. I like that. I'm going to steal some of that, Jamie. I'll tell people I did it, and I won't give you any credit at all.
It's coming down, and then, yeah.
All right. Kyle, do you have anything,
So-
any other questions for Jamie or anything else to add? I think we've covered a great deal.
Just if he has any, Jamie, if you have any last minute points that you want to make sure that you drive home, if you haven't had the opportunity yet to talk about, or the plan moving forward.
Not that spring to mind immediately, although that's not a guarantee that the stream won't end and I'll go, oh, tartar sauce. I meant to say X. So, but
Sure.
but no, nothing springs to mind.
Okay.
And where can people, one more time, reach you if they have any, if they want to message you?
They can always send email to president@atheist-community.org. They can send email to the board@atheist-community.org. Basically anywhere that I'm online, you can send messages to me. You can message me even on Facebook. I mean, that's something I probably shouldn't encourage people to do because now it's going to be difficult for me to talk to the people I regularly talk to. But if you're just trying to get a message to me, there's that. There's Twitter, even if your message is short and not complicated. But yeah, any of those places. I mean, I suppose my Twitter handle is @JamieTheHeathen. And on Facebook, I'm James Boone. And then also, there was a post with comments enabled made on the Atheist Experience official discussion group. If you're not already in there, it might be difficult to join at this point, but it's the second statement, and I'll be looking at comments there, emails, tweets, messages. The rest of my foreseeable life is responding to messages. So
that's what you do now, Jamie.
Yes, I am a message answer service. No, I say that because it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of, wow, look, even more people think that I'm, that I'm trying to eat babies, literally. But that's the job I signed up for, and the job I want to keep doing. So I'd like to do it correctly.
Very good. Well,
thank you. I realize what time it is.
Oh, what time is it?
It's almost 12:30 where I am. Or yeah, like 12:15, right?
Yeah, but Jamie, thank you very much for taking the time to come on here, and I hope that,
of course,
this goes a long way in sort of mending this divide, and we can all get together and sing Kumbaya again one day. Except you, Shannon, because you can't sing.
I can't. It's awful. It's
There has
tragic.
to be a secular version of that. I mean, mending this divide without reopening one between the broader community and trans folk or whatever. Unless that's I didn't Google to see if that was a slur, so I don't know. But trans people. But yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the broader public.
We'll all be demonstrating our characters going forward as we always have. I'm sure that the ACA is no exception to that. You will be demonstrating your character going forward, and I'm sure that people will go forward with you and take the steps ahead.
And together we will all be going forward. Together.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
Are you waiting for me to hit a hang up button or?
No,
No.
we've got to go off here. We're just saying goodbye. We're still live right now.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Send your hate mail to me. I can take it.
Oh, we'll get some, dude. Don't worry.
A date?
I don't want that to happen. That's the thing.
We're YouTubers.
You're really trying to end the show here? Okay, I can do that.
Oh, damn.